My name is Judy, and I am going to share a story with you from the Complete Tales of Beatrix Potter. Now, some of you might know her name because of some stories that you might have heard before, like the story of Peter Rabbit. But she wrote a whole series of books way back in 1902 and 1903. And she did all the beautiful illustrations, like this one right here. And it's from the story that I'm going to read to you. So if we see that right there, can you see that picture? It's got two mice in the picture. And this is a story about these two mice. And this story is named Two Bad Mice by Beatrix Potter. Once upon a time, there was a very beautiful doll's house. It had red brick and white windows, and it had real cloth curtains and a front door, and it had a fireplace and chimney. It was really cool. It belonged to two dolls called Lucinda and Jane. At least it belonged to Lucinda, but she never ordered any meals. And Jane was the cook there in the doll's house, but she never really did any cooking because all of the food came with the doll house. It was all toy food. Now, in this box of food, toy food, there were two red lobsters and a ham and a fish and a great big pudding and some pears and some oranges. But they would not come off of their plates. But they were extremely beautiful. Let me see if I can show you the pictures of them. See the picture of what they look like? Now, one morning, Lucinda and Jane had gone out for a drive in the doll perambulator. That's a doll buggy. And then no one at all was in the nursery. It was very quiet. And presently, there was a little scuffling, a little scratching noise over in the corner near the fireplace. There was a hole under the baseboard. Tom Thumb put his head out for just a moment, looking around, and then he popped it back out again. Tom Thumb was a mouse. Now, a minute afterwards, Hunca-Munca, his wife, Tom Thumb's wife, put her head out too. And when she saw that there was no one in the nursery, she ventured out upon the rug and went all the way over and looked, and there the dollhouse stood at the other side of the fireplace. Tom Thumb and Hunca-Munca looked at each other and then went cautiously across the hearth. They pushed on the little front door of the dollhouse. It was not locked. Now, Tom Thumb and Hunca-Munca went upstairs, and they peeped into the dining room of the dollhouse, and there they squeaked with joy. I wonder what that sounded like. Can you make a squeaky sound like a happy, happy mouse? I bet you can. Such a lovely dinner was all laid out on the table in the dollhouse. There was a tin spoon and a little lead knife and forks and 2 dolly chairs. Also very convenient. Tom Thumb set to work at once to carve the ham. It was a beautiful, shiny, yellow, streaked with red and white. But the knife just crumbled up. Ow, and it hurt his finger. He put his finger in his mouth. Oh, this is not boiled enough. This ham is not boiled at all. It is hard. You try it, Hunca-Munca. So Hunca-Munca stood up in her little chair, and she chopped at the ham with another one of the little dull lead knives. This is as hard as a ham at a cheesemonger's, said Hunca-Munca. Now, suddenly, the ham broke off its plate with a jerk and rolled under the table. Let it alone, says Tom Thumb. Give me some of that fish instead, Hunca-Munca. Let me see if I can show you these pictures on this page. Can you see the mice sitting at the table? Trying to eat. And here's one. Oh! That's when the ham went under the table. These mice are not very smart. Now, Hunca-Munca tried every tin spoon on the table, but that fish was glued to that dish. And then Tom Thumb lost his temper completely. He put the ham in the middle of the floor and he hit it with the tongs and the shovel from over by the tiny fireplace. The ham flew all over the place in pieces, for underneath all of that shiny and beautiful paint, it was nothing but plaster. Then there was no end to the rage and disappointment of Tom Thumb and Hunca-Munca the mice. They broke up the pudding, they broke up the lobster, they broke the toy peas and the pears and all of the toy oranges. And as the fish would not come off of its plate at all, they decided to put it in the red-hot, crinkly painted fireplace in the kitchen. But it wouldn't burn either. Tom Thumb went up to the kitchen chimney to look out, but there wasn't even any soot out there at all. He was completely mystified. When Tom Thumb went up the chimney, Hunca-Munca had another disappointment there in the kitchen. She found some tiny canisters on the table labeled rice and coffee, but when she turned them over and put them upside down, they just had little plastic beads inside. Then those mice set to work with all the mischief that they could possibly think of, especially Tom Thumb. He took Jane's clothes right out of the dresser drawer in the tiny dollhouse bedroom and threw them all over the floor. Then Hunca-Munca had a idea. She had actually quite a frugal mind for a mouse. After pulling half of the feathers out of Lucinda the doll's pillow, she remembered that she herself was in want of a new feather bed. With Tom Thumb's help, she carried the pillow downstairs and across the hearth, and with great difficulty squeezed it into the mouse hole. They managed it somehow. Then Hunca-Munca went back and fetched a chair and a bookcase and a bird cage and other small odds and ends. And the bookcase and the bird cage refused to go into the mouse hole completely. She abandoned them on the hearth. Now, Hunca-Munca left them behind, but went to fetch the cradle from the dollhouse. Hunca had just returned with another chair and was pushing it into the mouse hole when the noise of talking outside on the landing, got her attention. The mice rushed back into their hole, and the dolls came into the nursery. What a sight met the eyes of Jane and Lucinda the dolls. Lucinda sat upright in the kitchen and stared. Jane just leaned against the kitchen wall and smiled like she always does. But neither of them said a single word. They weren't that kind of doll. The bookcase and the bird cage were rescued from near the hearth, but Hunca had gotten the cradle and some of Lucinda's clothing into the mouse hole. See? She was successful in getting those in there. She also had some useful pots and pans that she managed to get into the hole, and several other things. Now, the little girl that the dollhouse belonged to said, I will get the doll that is dressed like a policeman. But the nurse said, I will get a mouse trap. So, that is the story of the very bad two mice. But they were not really so very, very bad after all, because Tom Thumb did decide to pay for everything that he had broken in his rage. He found a crooked sixpence under the hearth, and on Christmas Eve, he and Hunca went back to the dollhouse and stuffed it into one of the tiny stockings for Lucinda and Jane to find on Christmas morning. So it's not bad. Pretty good guy. And to pay for all of the damage that she had done, very early every morning, before anybody in the entire house is awake, Hunca comes with her dustpan and her broom and sweeps the dollhouse to this very day. Here she is. Now, one of the things that I found really interesting about this story is that Beatrix Potter, who wrote this book and who created all of these beautiful illustrations back in 1903, over 100 years ago, she had 2 pet mice that she kept in a bird cage in her studio, in her house. And that's who she looked at when she was drawing her pictures to help her make all the right choices about exactly how these mice should look. And do you know what their names were? Can you guess? One was a boy mouse and one was a girl mouse. What do you think their names were? Tom Thumb and Hunca. I hope you had a great time. I had a great time with you. I'll be back. Bye.